What are the matters that matter to you?
702 listens.
702.
Live
On the Prime Media Plus app.
DSTV channel 856.
92.7.
And 106 FM. Let's walk the talk.
Seven minutes past 9. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Welcome to the Clement Manyathela Show. Tshidi Madia in for Clement Manyathela today. As per usual, we start off with the open line where you call the shots. You determine the conversation. I, on my end, so an interesting opinion piece on News 24 this morning by its editor-in-chief, funny enough, Adrian Basson. He spoke about succession. Adrian Basson believes that we must have a conversation about succession in the DA. Succession in the big political parties, I think it's a conversation we can't avoid as a country because they tend to be in charge, right? They continue to enjoy a lot of support. I think Adrian Basson saying that the country should be discussing succession in the DA. I think attempts to stop succession debates in the ANC have definitely failed. This, of course, as Andile Lungisa tells the ANC's NEC that the highest decision-making body of the ANC in between conferences has absolutely failed. He says that the cohort of 2022 has not lived up to its promises, should actually call it quits and ask former President Thabo Mbeki to take over the reins and help the organization take over itself. I get it, they say when the ANC coughs, the rest of us catch the flu rather, the rest of us catch the flu. So I want your thoughts on these and other discussions that you want to bring up. 011-883-0702. That's the number to call in if you want to send voice notes or WhatsApp. That number is 072-702-1702.
702.
Let's walk the talk on 92.7
and 106 FM.
All right, so I was spoozing around this morning, then I see Adrian Basson's written opinion piece. I find his opinion pieces very interesting. Sometimes I vehemently disagree. Actually, often I vehemently disagree. But anyway, so he's written a piece here where he says the DA succession debate we should be having. So in the piece, Adrian Basson goes on to say, and even it's very interesting views, but he says the DA is transitioning from being an opposition party to one that could potentially lead a coalition government in the near future. Even that, by the way, is a big question. I mean, the ANC is on 40%, and the way the ANC is performing, one can't imagine it growing. So his view that the DA could lead a coalition, I think, might have legitimacy. What are your thoughts, even on that score, about the DA potentially leading? This is a party that's continuously hovered between 2022. It doesn't have room for growth. The view from a lot of pundits has always been that the DA has reached the ceiling, but it would not need to grow further. Think about it. If the ANC is on a decline, which again is how the Andile Lungisa view comes into the conversation. I'll come to Andile. Let me just continue with this opinion piece. He then says it's a timely test for the DA. Remember, the DA has a Congress. It's got an elective conference next year where by all scores, it looks like John Steenhuisen might want to run again. I've been looking at interesting figures in the DA who could make for an interesting federal leader and whether or not they're able to play in the South African political landscape and do so successfully. Anyway, Adrian Basson goes on to say that, it speaks about the ANC. The ANC should be concerned, the DA's first concern rather should be about national interest. So the DA must think about what is best for the country. And if you listen to political speak, that's what they say that they care about. He says that the DA has proven to be more efficient in local and provincial government than the ANC, looking at the Western Cape and Cape Town. And I think that you can argue that it's shown itself to be, but there's also an argument that's been made that they didn't receive the Western Cape or Cape Town at the level that Joburg is. And I suppose those who want to see a Helen Zille mayorship in Joburg would have to wade through those kind of waters, is that you find the Joburg city rather in the worst levels of degradation than what they did when they inherited Cape Town. So that's an argument to be made. I still maintain, though, that the DA had a hand in Joburg, had a hand in Ekurhuleni, had a hand in Tshwane. And I'm not sure if the marked difference actually existed. I live in Ekurhuleni. I did not feel that so-called Ekurhuleni difference. But anyway, he says that they're better. And then he goes on to say the DA, according to polls, has been the biggest beneficiary of the coalition arrangement, the GNU. I think I agree with that. And part of why that happens, if I think about it, is the DA does a really good job of marketing itself. The ANC can sit and say the DA is taking our victories. Leon Schreiber, particularly Dean McPherson specifically, those two, they are punting their work. They're doing things in the departments, they're agitating, and they talk about it. So I do think that I agree on that score, that the DA has maximized on being in the GNU. So that's a note he makes. Then he says the contrary, then he looks at why the ANC is in trouble. The ANC supporters in a free fall due to corruption, governance scandals that have been exposed. Obviously, speaking about the work that News 24 itself has done, he looks at the polls that see the ANC going under 30% as an issue, says there's no debate that the ANC stands to be the biggest beneficiary of the ANC's losses again, because it's right there as well. What are your thoughts on what he's saying? That the conversation that we need to have is about that, again, maintains a good track record. He brings in the name of the DA's Cape Town Mayor, Jordan Hill-Lewis, who I also think is an interesting figure. If he was to lead the DA, I think the DA would be understood slightly differently, because I still do think that there is an odd thing around the federal leader of the DA. I think John is playing in a pool where we're becoming even more polarized than we were before. And I don't know if he's got the firebrand, the metal to navigate that space. Remember, South Africa still cares about personalities, whether you like it or not. Populism is also still part and parcel of what we do as far as our politics are concerned. I want your thoughts on all of this. I'll bring in a second Andile Lungisa's views about the ANC, which almost support a little bit of what Adrian Basson is saying about what the ANC's performance is and the scandals that rock the ANC. Because when you look at that, you need to then add the ANC's response to those scandals and the ANC's response to being at 40% and whether or not it was sufficient. An ANC NEC member, Andile Lungisa, says the ANC has been unable to put on the table anything that will turn around its trajectory. 011 883 0702 072 702 1702.
Let's walk the talk.
702.
All right, so yeah, that's what I want. And then just going back to what Andile Lungisa said. So from my understanding, Andile Lungisa at an NEC, the last NEC meeting, that was quite symbolic. It stood up and said to them, we don't meet. For 4 months, there's absolutely nothing. There is a crisis around the budget. The ANC's highest decision-making body still doesn't sit and meet, doesn't discuss, doesn't deliberate on what the way forward is. That NEC, the body that got into the GNU, doesn't sit and discuss the GNU. He then speaks about that 40% remark that I've just made, that the party finds itself at 40% and then does absolutely very little on the table to turn around the trajectory. He, from my understanding, mentioned the issue of the NGC. The ANC's got a midterm review coming up later this year. Traditionally, or in the past, at this point in August, what you would have seen a lot of movements, documents running around, going back and forth about what the ANC's NGC is meant to be dealing with. How do they assess their performance halfway since they've come into power in 2022? He told his comrades that he doesn't see it. I've heard people saying that some have stood up in those meetings and said to the top 7, you have failed us. You have not done anything to help the organization. And the difficulty is, in that case, we feel the impact of a party that's in government, that's dithering, that doesn't know whether it's coming or going. I actually just wrote the name Andile Lungisa on my Twitter profile yesterday, and somebody said he is the most honest about this current ANC, saying, just want to find the tweet for you again, that literally said, where is that tweet? Where has it gone? There is a tweet where somebody said, I'm told I'm being unfair to the DA. I'll look at that a little bit later on. But somebody's saying, I agree with Andile Lungisa. This is the worst ANC NEC of our generation. The most useful, rudderless. Not rudderless, but I think he meant rudderless. That's kind of what the conversation is. Even amongst, this is an ANC member who was tweeting this. Koketo in Santon, good morning.
Hello?
Hi, Koketo. Yes, go ahead.
Yes, I just want to say, I think for me, the person who could actually possibly turn around the ANC in terms of leadership is Park Style. I think he has the nettle. So when he was mayor of Joburg wasn't falling apart like what it is now. I mean, sure, Joburg now just looks absolutely deplorable and terrible. Like it looks like a mess, but under his tenure, he actually did a good job as mayor. And he does have almost like the requisite like educational level, to do a good job. So I think if the ANC had to bet on someone like that, who's not too young, but like somewhere in the middle, I think actually he could be competent enough to turn around the prospects of the ANC at the polls. I also think that, going into this next election, the local government elections, what we've seen is that these by-elections have also been almost like a good indicator of where things are going, because I don't know if you've noticed, like in certain, sections, ANC is actually bouncing back and it's almost consolidating power. So I think I think so too, honestly, because it's not, I think them getting just below 40% was like a rude awakening for them, because you can see that they're almost consolidating in certain areas and actually getting. No, for instance, like I don't know if you follow Wayne Sussman. In terms of the by-election.
Analyst, I follow Wayne a lot.
Yeah, so I'm actually surprised with some of the by-elections that they're winning, and some of them winning them very convincingly, So I think this 40% that they got, which none of us really saw that coming, right? A lot of us thought that they were going to get like 52%. I think it was actually a wake-up call to them, and I see them regrouping ahead of this local government elections. I think if they put the right type of leaders like Pakstow and people like that who can show people another way, I think I do see them regrouping when it comes to the local government elections.
All right, thank you so much. Let's go get out in the East Rand, in my region, where I say it didn't matter who was in charge. We saw the deterioration. Anyway. I don't agree with her views, though, about the ANC doing a turnaround on 40%. Neither does Andile Lungisa, for that matter. 011-883-0702 for calls, 072-702-1702. When she mentioned Pakstow, by the way, somebody WhatsApps me and goes, those bicycle lanes. Do you remember those bicycle lanes here in Sandton? So Pakstow was not everybody's cup of tea, but his name has also been peddled as somebody who can take on possibly a Helen Ziller for a solid showdown for a fight for Joburg. Because a fight for Joburg, in the hopes of many, would mean a better Joburg, and that's what residents want, right? Put the best foot forward. What does that look like? As I said, 011-883-0702, 072-702-1702.
702.
Let's walk the talk on 92.7
and 106 FM.
It's 9:25. I want to go back to your calls now. We're discussing the issue of succession. Adrian Basson says the succession debate that we should be having as a country has got to be about the Democratic Alliance. What kind of person is suitable to take the DA forward? And he makes a point as to why he believes that this should be, stating there that he believes that the DA is transitioning from being an opposition party, it's now in government, and one that could potentially lead a coalition government in the near future, citing, of course, the ANC's downward trajectory and its scandals as one of the reasons why the DA is poised to possibly become a leading party. 011-883-0702. That's for phone calls. 072-702-1702. If you're sending WhatsApps and voice notes. Kustas in Midrand, good morning.
Yes, good morning, Tshidi. Yeah, Tshidi, when I look at the DA, I think DA is very blessed in many ways because it's got leaders at provincial and at local government who are absolutely stunning, hard workers, people that makes you, even though you don't like the DA, you can't help but see their work, right? The problem of the Democratic Alliance is the national leadership is so out of touch with what's going on the ground, so much that a lot of black people don't find it appealing the way it should be. I'm looking at that letter of Adrian. Jordan Hill does not appeal in this country as much as Chris Pappas does in KZN. And he doesn't even talk about him. And yet there's the guy who understands the spirit of South Africa, who embodies the values of this country. They don't even consider him. So I'm suggesting to you that in his article, he stated that Jonathan has grown. He hasn't grown.
Lewis. No, he hasn't. I always find that really weird that when they look back at 2019 and want to make an argument that John Steenhuisen has done well, because they've just opposed him with Musi. That's not true. He hasn't done anything remarkable. What they can argue, which I've accepted, is that under John, they were led into national government. But that's not because John is remarkable. That's because the ANC fumbled. It's the ANC's fault lines that landed the DA there. And the question then is, how do they maximize that? And we see that in the marketing. You see that in Dean. You see that definitely in Leon Schreiber. I'm not seeing it in John Steenhuisen himself per se.
Yeah, John Steenhuisen didn't even like by some of the candidates within the DA because it didn't appeal that much. He was good as a number 2 as opposed to a number 1. And then the federal executive sabotaged him even further at national government level. I don't think we speak enough about how John Steenhuisen has been sabotaged by this current federal executive. He's got a good temperament, but the federal executive is just out of control. Even on things that when you hear John speak on a personal level, you could have handled this very well. But the federal
struggling to rein in Helen Ziller, having struggled to rein in an Emma Powell at some point as well. He struggles to rein in the very people in the DA who did not want the GNU, because what they don't talk about often enough is that there are more people in the DA who are opposed to the GNU, that they escaped literally scraped through to remain in the GNU when the conversations were happening. But to your point, when you said that there are brilliant people, I don't think we talk enough about Asher Soropen as well, who's the deputy finance minister. He and his counterpart David Masondo on the other side, I think, are equally brilliant. And those are people that, when you look at the next layer of leadership across the board, is who you should be looking at, people who are brilliant. But I take your point. I also wonder, though, about a John, and even in KZN, and you just mentioned the mayor, Christopher Pappas. I wonder how they cope, though, in a populist pool of our national politics, because whether we like it or not, Krista, South Africans also do get drawn to particular characters. They listen to the firebrands, they look at particular personalities and are drawn to that. Christas? I don't know what's going on there, but I was hoping to get his thoughts about how somebody like that fares. I mean, he says John Steenhuisen makes for a good number 2, and says that actually if you listen to John, and I think a part of me does agree with that, though, that I do think sometimes he is measured. What he struggles to do is to rein in the party. And I've also questioned his efficiency as a political party leader versus John in government. I think that being in the GNU has been quite interesting in showing a little bit of who he is, but it also has flagged and highlighted his shortcomings as a leader of the organization as well. It's 9:30.
7:02
Let's walk the talk on 92.7
and 106 FM.
9:35, you're listening to the Clement Manyathela Show. Tshidi Madia standing in for Clement. I'm having a succession conversation, I suppose, right? Succession conversation with regards to the two biggest political parties, the two biggest GNU partners, the bulls that often clash. Opinion piece on News 24 saying that the debate we should be having as a country, the debate we should be looking to, is the one in the DA. I mean, the DA on that score actually holds their elective conference before the ANC's. The DA's one is due, Congress is due next year. The ANC's one is due in 2027. The ANC, I think, has struggled to put a lid on its succession debates. I think Andile Lungisa makes an interesting argument that the NEC has failed. It has not resuscitated the organization. I mean, insiders said to me that even the economy on that score and unemployment, the ANC doesn't have anything concrete on the table from his perspective around fixing those issues. He's complained about an inability to hold meetings, even when the country's in crisis. You're the governing party. You don't meet to deliberate as an NEC that's as powerful as you are to figure out what the way forward is. Somebody on the somebody on X on Twitter says to me, ANC national officials can't even organize an effective and timely NEC meeting. They're now abusing state resources for NEC meetings. Of course, that's that shambolic NEC meeting. After months of not meeting, they changed venues mid-NEC meeting. They complained about so many things, but they ended up obviously at, I think, the City Hall in Germiston. Sam Trong says you're being unfair to the DA. On Ekurhuleni in particular, the only thing that changed was political leadership, but the same corrupt ANC officials and HODs remained still there now. Like Zilla said, it would take at least 2 full terms to turn the cities around. What says you? 011 883 0702 072 702 1702. That's for WhatsApps and voice notes. Let me play a couple of your voice notes.
Hey, good morning, Tshidi and the listeners. I do agree with Andre Person when he says the DA will eventually overtake ANC, even on the national level. And the reason is just simple. It's purely because ANC is in so much mess and there's just so much scandals around them. So the only way to escape, or the only way for them to let go of everything, is to just hand over power to the DA. That was the initial plan. Thanks.
Good morning, Tshidi. Chivas here in Boksburg. Look, the DA for me, they've definitely reached the ceiling. And I think their policies are not pro everyone. For example, John Steenhuisen and his comments with regards to transformation. Instead of rather saying, let's transform and let's use a different strategy on how we're going to transform, they just want to scrap transformation. And for me, that's where they lose it. Shivers in Boksburg.
But you can understand why some people think that the ANC is consolidating. You know, if you look at the elections, the by-elections, yeah, you can see them winning wards. Some of them, they were not their wards, but they're winning them back. So, yes, you can say that ANC is consolidating. And you cannot shy away from the fact that, you remember, people wrote off EFF, but you can see that in some of the wards or municipalities, you can see that they are gaining some little bit of momentum there. So there is a shift in the political spectrum from 2024 to the latest one, the by-elections, if there are anything to go by. So I understand why some people are saying that there is a shift from, there is a change. ANC is really consolidating. So yeah, but we can only blame the opposition. They're just childish behavior and just directionless. Sfiso.
Thank you so much, Fisa, for that. I'm not convinced. I do look at those by-elections quite a lot. They've been very interesting outcomes. I mean, Sidibeng, which is traditionally where an ANC would have done well, or an EFF, they did dismally. But there are other interesting areas where they've regained support, absolutely. But you need to then look back at previous performance in the wards during the local government elections. The ANC has lots of ward councillors for a reason. So that's always been there for me. I'm not necessarily convinced per se still on that score. I do agree, and I'll always agree with this part where you speak about the GNU argument, for instance, when you say the DA has benefited. I see that. I see that the DA has been able to try and showcase what it represents and what it can do, particularly when I speak about when you watch Leon Schreiber, and they're planning, by the way. The DA is very clever in thinking about the future. You can see they, I think they spruced up an office in Australia. That's for a reason, because there are voters there. So they are thinking about those things. They are planning. I am watching that. Looking at the WhatsApp line, Joe says, if the stigma of the DA being a white political party was removed, then the DA could prosper. I strongly believe that all that holds it back from progressing and getting the number it needs to lead the country, and I just wish citizens of the country could put color behind and focus on its potential of leading the country forward. That's Joe. Another message on the WhatsApp line says, Lungisa is correct and I support his view. The interim structure must not include the current NEC. Recycling incompetent leaders in regions and provinces is the problem. Mbeki can turn the ANC's fortunes and lead the party to next year's elections. Remember, about 60% did not vote, and those are traditional ANC supporters. Tau failed in Jozi. Remember the billing crisis. Yes, we very quickly forget what people did wrong. Because if you speak on that, people failed. Think about the electricity minister. A lot of people, when they're looking at the ANC, think about what is the next layer of ANC leadership. They speak a lot about Dr. Jose Ntsura. But who can forget no scooter, no vote? Why are people so quick to forget that there were things happening? Or the smart speaker, Peu Capital scandal in Tshwane. So there are things like that as well. 011-883-0702, 072-702-1702 for your voice notes and WhatsApps.
Morning, TD, and your listeners. It's Eugene from Baklo here. Well, TD, what I can say to you is the MK party, especially the MK, yeah, but even though the EFF is included, But the MK party was a blessing in disguise for the DA, because when the MK came through, it took a huge chunk of the ANC voters. That's why the ANC fell to 40%. And because of that, the ANC chose the DA as its GNU partner. So I can say actually the MK party was a blessing for the ANC, for the DA. So yeah, the DA shouldn't think that they did anything special for South Africans. No, they didn't. Yeah.
Hi, Tshidi. Andile here in 4 ways. Look, I think the DA has plateaued, definitely. With everything that's been happening with the ANC, instead of people going to vote for the DA, they went to vote for a new party, the MK party of Jacob Zuma. So that does suggest to me that people in South Africa, particularly black people by broad definition, which accounts for like 80% of citizens, they would rather go for other ANC splinter parties than go to the DA. So the DA is not going to lead the coalition, not anytime soon.
Good morning, TD. Regarding this morning's topics or the voice notes some people listening, they are talking about the by-elections, about certain particular parties winning by-election votes. I don't look into that, because if you look at the numbers, let's say maybe a community of 10,000, but only 2,000 go out and vote. So I don't look that much into it. I'll wait for the big ones and let's take it from there. But I'm not reading too much into it, because you can win by elections. Service delivery will stay stagnant. Or people might just wake up, that's all. Thanks.
Hi, Tshidi. The only problem in South Africa when we talk about the past, the apartheid government, we are not in the apartheid government, we are in a democracy. Let's focus for our own democracy. What happened from the past is happened from the past. And what is supposed to be happening right now, it is our own responsibility. Even if we are making some transformative policy, I recommend economic empowerment based on poverty. And that doesn't discriminate some other nations like white or Indians or whatsoever. Economic empowerment based on poverty, because all those who were born maybe in 1994 or before 1994, 1990, whatsoever, they are innocent about the triple BEE. My name is Les.
Thank you so much for those voice notes. There's just two things that I thought were really interesting. About the by-elections, I also don't use them as the measure that people want to use them as. I don't read them as the same measure of what's going to happen. It's not the litmus test that we think it is. In some instances, it can be. I mean, if you look at the PA's performance in the Western Cape, I know for a fact that the DA is worried about the municipalities it's in charge of in the Western Cape, and with reason, right? I've spoken to a couple of people as well about what's the way forward. There's lots of concern about that. And sometimes, if you listen to the political rhetoric, even if you go back to 2024, particularly John Steenhuisen's messaging, that concern was there. When we were talking about the ANC's downward trajectory, the DA is also actually on a downward trajectory. And I think that we don't talk about that enough, even as members of the media. We don't go in and zero in enough on what's happening there. There is somebody who also mentioned the coalition, not leaving the coalition. I agree. I don't think that anyone's going to leave this dysfunctional marriage. The idea of the ANC threatening to broaden the GNU, I don't see that happening. Some will tell you that it's too radical a thing for the ANC to even try. The ANC right now is happy with the way the GNU works. It works for some in the ANC who are in control and who are in power and they enjoy it. It works. It works for the DA. The dysfunctional marriage, as horrible as it is, it works. I mean, one of the questions I asked Helen Zille was about that, in the statement of intent that can't be challenged really in the courts because it's supposedly meaningless, So you can sit and say, oh, the ANC undermines the statement of intent. It does. because it can, and because there's so little that the DA can do. Part of my criticism has always been, why did you give them a president before you got everything that you wanted? Why did you not barter? And I can tell you without question, everybody goes, well, time was against us. And I've spoken to different DA leaders about, why did you do this to yourselves? That thing is going to be exactly what it is. That dysfunctional marriage will remain exactly what it is. The issue of the MKP helping the DA, it's also an interesting one for me, because when I looked at the scoreboard at the IEC, I'll never forget going, those are different variations of the ANC. When you look at the MKP, the ANC, and the EFF, it's just a question of preferences for people of the electorate. They prefer a different kind of ANC, hence they split the votes the way that they did. If egos were not a factor, I'd argue, those people would still be one thing, which tells you, right, which counters, I suppose, Adrian's argument around the DA's potential in that regard. 011-883-0702, 072-702-1702. I wonder if I'm making any sense.
702
Let's walk the talk on 92.7
and 106 FM.
And I want to go through this message. I promised to keep this person anonymous, but it's just a view very quickly on what Andile Lungisa had supposedly said, okay, in that NEC. Somebody says, as a former NEC member of the Youth League alongside Lungisa, I feel compelled to offer a rejoinder to his recent views. I'm genuinely perplexed by the short-term thinking that some of our NEC members, like Andile, advance when faced with the complex and multi-layered challenges confronting both the ANC and, by extension, the country. The ANC today is burdened with a myriad of problems, chief among them the dual challenge of fixing the country's pressing issues while confronting our own internal dysfunction to ensure the organization remains fit for purpose. Ironically, many of these problems were either created or worsened by the very people now loudly lamenting the state of the ANC they continue to lead. Perhaps one day we'll have the courage to hold an honest and unflinching discussion about this. What troubles me most is that the NEC members, like Andile, often offer no concrete solutions, only negative commentary. What exactly will Thabo Mbeki do now that he could not do or did not do when he led the ANC? The organization's structural fabric began to fray during the presidencies of Kgalema and Zuma. What realistically will Kgalema achieve now that he could not then? Andile's prescriptions, while perhaps well-intentioned, are short-term in nature and inward-looking at best. The ANC's renewal requires more than recycled rhetoric. It demands long-term pragmatic solutions anchored in both political honesty and organizational discipline. That's a message that I got from Molefe. He says I can say his name now, Molefe, who had served obviously in the ANC, saying that the issues actually is that you have leaders who also sit and point fingers. But that's the greater problem with all of us, isn't it? And about our country, is that it's very easy to point at the problems. And very often we complain that not enough people are willing to roll up their sleeves and get their hands dirty to fix the countries. And that's the back and forth that you're finding in the political space. I wonder what it feels like then as an ordinary voter trying to make up your mind when this is what you see when you look at the political landscape. Thank you so much for your contributions.